Okay, let's talk about Benjamin Franklin. My guess is that every single one of us has heard of Ben Franklin before. He's the guy who wrote Poor Richard's Almanac, and we know some of his most famous sayings. An apple a day keeps the doctor away. Early to bed, early to rise, makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. And who can forget the famous one? Fear is proof that God loves us and wants us to be happy. All from Ben. He invented a new kind of spectacles. He invented a new kind of fireplace. He conducted scientific experiments like the electricity experiment with the kite and the key. And we've probably seen the picture of him standing outside in his long coat with the lightning in the sky and the key and the kite. Um, yeah, that guy. He was also one of the founding fathers of the United States and one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. So he did it all, apparently. And when we read his autobiography, as we're doing this week, um, we might be looking for some indication of the man who was so gifted. I think we're a little surprised then to find out that the tone of his autobiography is quite humble. It's a bit folksy, like we're sitting down with a guy to hear some funny stories, and we're not disappointed. He has a sense of humor. And I think that that's really what Franklin was like um, in person, among people, not privately, not with his family, but with an audience. He liked to show humility, I think, and humor when he was doing something interesting. That's how he conducted business. That's how he helped to get the Declaration of Independence put together. That's how he helped to win the Revolutionary War, with his humility and his good humor. But if you read the text, his humility did not prevent him from including those two letters from his friends who were basically begging him to write his autobiography because he was such an important man. If he were truly humble, he would not have included those letters. So it seems like it's a kind of false humility. He won't say it himself, but he'll get other people to write letters about it. That seems a little slippery and even rhetorical. Um, I think that Franklin knew that his life would be an example for others to follow. And so in this text, he puts the best spin on his life. And it is very readable still today. One part of his life that he doesn't really emphasize it, but it comes out. One part of his life that does come out is his deism. Deism, Deism, is a belief that there is a God and that God created the heavens and the earth. And then this God stepped away from everything. So it's very different from what the Puritans believed. The Puritans believed that God was everything. God was their partner. God was a planner. He was someone who liked to put people to the test. And he had a hand in their day-to-day lives. He was a constant presence for the Puritans. For Franklin, God was a powerful genius. God created a universe that was like a clockwork, like a mechanical thing with precise rules and precise mechanics. And so a person who looked closely could figure out how the universe works by experimenting and figuring out the rules. But God didn't finally get involved in the lives of men and women. He just didn't care, according to the deists. And so that's deism. Franklin was a deist. Thomas Jefferson was a deist. And as we'll see, Thomas Paine was a deist as well. It was a common belief at a time when the world was kind of changing. And it seems to work best with the Enlightenment period, when people were moving away from the usual forms of authority to embrace their own individuality and their own power. And at this time, freedom is a very real concept. It was something that people cared deeply about and something that they were willing to stand up for. So it's also part of Franklin's life and the people around Franklin. They were deists. They believed in freedom, and so this autobiography suggests that, at least. But it's a little complicated. We see that Franklin was raised as a Presbyterian, and then he makes a point of going to services. What he expects to hear when he goes to church is that the minister will deliver a sermon about how people should be kind to one another and help each other and work for the greater good. What he ends up hearing, however, is a sermon about the specifics of Presbyterianism from the Bible that would make people better Presbyterians than better citizens. So Franklin stops going to church and instead spends his Sunday mornings reading books instead of going to church. That's deism. Believing that people should strive to be good humans rather than just good Christians. That's deism. Seeing the institution of religion as something that is valuable for other people, but not for him, that's deism. We even see his deism as he discusses his plan for moral perfection. When Franklin shares this idea, about the middle part of this section of his autobiography, it's really a bit of a joke that people would have laughed at in his own time. There are no perfect people, and everyone would have accepted that idea. If you think you can reach perfection, there's a great amount of hubris in you. Only God and Jesus can be perfect. So Franklin's plan is comical in a way, but it's interesting in that he sets out to improve himself. If you go to the library now, you'll see a whole section that has books on self-improvement. And so it's a concern that Franklin picks up on. We can always be better people. He recognizes that he has flaws, and he believes that if he works at them systematically, he can get rid of them and he can become a better person. So he gives us his list of virtues, beginning with temperance. And we might notice that he has a list of 13 items. The Puritans would have stopped at 12, since that number 12 carries great weight for Christians. Franklin would have known this too, and so he intentionally goes just beyond it to 13, which is an unlucky number unless you're not superstitious. And what's more, his last virtue is about humility. And the way he expresses it, it's not just about Christian humility, but Christian and Greek humility. That too is deism. Christ is an important figure, but he's one of many. Even Franklin's prayers emphasize deism. He prays to the powerful goodness, not God, and the bountiful Father, not Jesus. When he includes important quotations, he selects the Greeks and the Romans as often as he does the Bible. In Franklin's view, wisdom is wisdom, whether it comes from the Bible or from the pagans. So he sets about to improve himself, and he tells us that it was really an impossible task. He set out to master one virtue before moving on to the next, and he finds that when he had moved on to the next virtue, he notices that he slips back into his bad habits from the previous ones. And so he gives us the anecdote of the speckled axe. You can never get a rusty axe completely polished, and you can never make your human soul perfect. So Franklin suggests with good humor that we should all try our best and to make changes so that we can be better people. And finally, we should want to be better people so that we can make the world a better place for those around us. The piece begins on a note of humility, and it ends on that note as well. So let me ask you, do you think